Hello, everyone, and this is NLP Radio on Stream. Hi, Alexander.
Hello.
I absolutely love introducing you our usual guest, Alexander Gerasimov, Russian NLP trainer, NLP practitioner, NLP master, a famous negotiator in Russia. Geography of seminars and trainings led by Alexander is over 22 countries and 70 cities. It's really impressive. Lots of experience. And today we continue and moving on discussing neurological levels, Pyramid of Robert Dills. Alexander, lastly, we discussed the theoretical part. Today would be nice to give more practice and more examples. So what could we discuss?
Today we will discuss how can we use Robert Dills' pyramid in a direct manner, for example, in communication or in consulting. It is one of the most popular tools in coaching. Basically, for defining a meaningful goal, for removing, let us say, needless life elements, in the form of a metaphor, it is like shaking a tree to remove everything excessive, for only essential elements could remain. This technique has a very wide field of application, and now I'd like to remove from the theory to practice and to discuss how we can apply this pyramid of logical levels. For example, in communication with other people, in increasing our self-awareness. For I recommend you that you should listen to our previous podcast if you haven't heard it. The awareness line is lying exactly in the middle of the level of strategies. We are aware of environment and behavior very well. Everyone is, but not everyone is able to be aware of his or her strategies as habits, values, identities. As early as our self-awareness begins to grow, we become able to control it using this pyramid, resolving our internal problems and conflicts which, let us be honest, everyone has.
Right. Lastly, when you spoke about values, I think for a big percent of our audience, it was a discovery. What are values? And I believe many of you have analyzed your own values and maybe came to something useful. So today we'll try to implement this knowledge which we got from Alexander into a little bit of practice. Very often I hear from you when somebody confesses he's got a problem, you say, try to lead it through neurological levels. Try to lead this problem, make a technique with those levels. What do you usually advise to do?
It's rather not about passing it through, but about looking at a situation from all logical levels, and in some cases just to remove something needless. Or, for example, a situation, I think the word order is not pretty appropriate in this case, not in the sense of putting things in order, but in the sense of defining a certain value corresponding to each identity, of defining a certain habit corresponding to each value. Because it happens very often. A person has everything mixed up. One thing that I pretty often recommend that people should do is to be able to define, first of all, the context, and second, to be able to define which role and in which context should be. Because, for example, people very often deliver a speech not in order to provide some information, but in order to show that they are tougher than somebody. Or, for example, people work not in order to improve their skills or to make money, but in order to show, for example, their ex-boss that they have managed to achieve something without him. It's like substitution of notions. You can imagine a weirdly assembled car having wheels of one model, the body of another model, and the engine of a third model. In order to avoid such mess, we should, let us say, clean up each of our identities, each of our contexts.
Okay, so maybe let's take one of the examples. Talking about values, skills, behavior, so that it was illustrative for our listeners? What could be the example?
You could consider a request of yours.
Yeah, great. It's a great idea.
Some internal conflict or a problem you'd like to discuss in our podcast.
Yeah, with pleasure. The problem is that I gained extra weight, and not 2 or 3 kilos, but really a lot of weight, like about 25 extra kilos. And it's okay. I mean, it's not a big deal. Before, I used to lose weight immediately, just immediately. Get on a diet, 1, 2 weeks, and I'm done. But right now, this is the first time when it's a great challenge for me to lose each 100 grams. And I understand it's not the point of dietology, it's a point of psychology. And I would use this opportunity now to discuss it with great pleasure.
Well, a counter question. To eat food, what logical level is it?
I'm not sure I understand. To eat, which level it is in my pyramid? In my own pyramid or generally?
В твоем, in your pyramid.
I wish I don't know. I don't know.
When you choose what to eat, what level is it? Is it environment, behavior, or strategy?
Стратегия. Это
Okay,
ценность.
actions. Strategy, probably strategy.
Да, это именно.
Yes, exactly. It refers to making a choice.
Ситуация, ты можешь съесть или
You
это,
have a
или
situation.
это.
You can eat
Выбирай.
either this food
Вот
or
этот
that
момент
food,
выбора — это
and you
определенная
choose.
стратегия.
And the moment of
И
making a choice is
я
a
предлагаю
certain
подняться на
strategy,
один уровень
and
выше,
I suggest moving a
исходя
level
из какой
upward
ценности
based on which
ты
value
поступаешь
do you
в данный
behave.
момент.
At
Можно,
this
например,
moment,
взять
can you give an example
пример
from
из
your
твоей
life,
жизни недавний,
which
который ты
has
хорошо
happened
помнишь, где у
recently,
тебя было
and
именно
which you
эта
remember
возможность?
very
Ты
well,
могла бы это
when you
изменить,
had an
поскольку ты решила
opportunity,
это
when you could choose to not eat something, but after all, you've decided to eat it for some reason.
Yeah, I always know why. Because it's kind of a fixed reaction on a stress I have or reaction to dullness which I have in my life. Every time I feel boring, every time I feel apathy, I take chocolates, I take cookies, and for a moment of maybe 20 minutes, I start feeling a little higher with my spirit. So it's like a strategy, exactly.
Да,
Yes.
это
It is a strategy
которую ты
that you
применяешь
apply to implement a
для
value.
того, чтобы
We
реализовать
understand
ценность.
that it is included into the
Понимаешь, что
pyramid,
пирамида,
and a
возможно,
strategy is making a
именно
choice,
стратегия — это
making
выбор.
a choice in an
Выбор
attempt to implement.
попытки.
You
Ты
say,
говоришь, мне
I'm
скучно,
bored,
поэтому
that's
я ем.
why I eat.
Я чувствую
I
себя
feel
там
dull,
уныло
and
как-то,
I
я ем.
eat.
А,
Sweet.
какие-то сладости,
Some
потому что
sweets,
это,
because
например,
it will
повысит тебе
improve your mood or
настроение или
distract
как-то
you
отвлечет.
somehow.
Yeah, exactly.
So it
Смотрите, у нас
appears that this
получается, что вот
strategy implements our value not the way we'd like it to,
реализует нашу
because
ценность
it's
не так, как мы бы
physiology,
хотели.
because it is so. I have a suggestion.
Ну,
Let's
потому
move
что,
a level upward, and for example, you are in a situation when you are bored and you
у меня
want
такое
to somehow
предложение.
cheer
Вот
yourself
давай
up
поднимемся на
and to
один
have some
уровень,
fun.
и
What
у тебя
else
вот есть
strategies do you have
ситуация,
to
когда тебе
implement
скучно.
exactly this
Тебе
value?
хочется
We
как-то
understand
себя
that having
повеселить.
fun can mean
Какие
different
еще есть?
things.
Ну, это может...
Emotions. I need emotions in my life.
Да,
So
вот
when I have little of emotion, I start compensating it.
да, вот для
Yes,
того, чтобы
in
убрать эту
order to
компенсацию,
remove this
я предлагаю вот
compensation,
просто
I
ответить
suggest that
себе
you should
на
ask
вопрос,
yourself,
а
what
как
else
еще
can
я
I
могу
do to
снизить
exhilarate
этот
myself?
уровень веселья?
What other
Какие
strategies
другие
can I
стратегии
apply?
есть? То
If
есть, если
this
у нас
chain
идет
is
цепочка
leading us
от
from a
более
higher
высокого
logical
платить
level
уровня
downward
идет по цепочке вниз
to
не
not
к тому,
what
к чему мы хотели,
we did
мы
want,
можем эту
we can
ценность
implement
реализовать
this
каким-то
value
другим образом.
some other way. Of course, I can give a clue. When you communicate with a person applying a similar technique, in this case, you could move up to a high logical level and offer that person to get down the pyramid some other way. What options could be available in this situation? I suggest that you should express your creativity and name one or two inappropriate options. For if you knew some other ways, you would use those at once. So maybe you will have to invent something new.
It's not so easy as it seems. Uh, for me, how I could compensate the feeling of dullness is always interacting with intellectual people.
Wow,
Close
it is a
interaction
method.
with
What else?
intellectual people.
It will be great if we have about 20 such potential methods, and our listeners are welcome to help us in comments.
Uh, expressing myself. Expressing myself somewhere.
A little bit more specifically, please.
On the stage, as a performance, at work, as a professional, whatever, any kind of expressions of my talent. It's important.
Good. What else?
Those are the most significant. Interaction with intellectual people and expressing myself in the eyes of those intellectual people. Those are the most important.
There is a peculiarity when we eat. Eating is easy. You can just stretch your arm, and then everything is in a daze. Communicating with new, interesting, intelligent people is often not just stretching your arm. It's another sort of effort. Therefore, I suggest that you should offer another strategy which could be applied similarly, easily.
Okay, any kind of hobby. Any kind of hobby. Karaoke, singing, whatever. Something like this. Shopping.
Please, more.
Traveling is very primitive. Traveling raises mood to anyone. So traveling as well, sure.
Well, if you want to eat suddenly, you won't travel to somewhere because you are hungry.
Taking a bath. But taking a bath will never compensate this immediate what I have, like raising of my mood.
Very often sweets, basically as fast-release carbohydrates, they are like drugs. When your body is choosing between an immediate pleasure and some postponed pleasure, it will say, look, where I am, and when Thursday comes, like in an anecdote. So it's critical here to understand that there are different sorts of pleasure. Pleasure can be immediate, or postponed, or continuous. What else variants can you offer?
It doesn't come to me immediately.
While you are commenting, I'll ask one more question. Let us get back to the level of strategies where you choose to eat tasty sweet food to implement your value of pleasure. I'll ask one more question. What else values can eating help you implement? Eating is a very versatile method of reaching a huge amount of strategies. What else values can eating help you implement?
It's difficult to say because I know a famous variant, which could be called something like to feel calm, but to feel calm is not my problem. I never feel anxious. It's not my problem. I feel calm without sweets.
Okay, what else? What values can eating help you implement?
Potentially.
In a certain context, if we take some specific period of time, for example a lunch or a dinner, I would recommend that every time before eating something, you should ask yourself, what am I doing it for? The question what for is lifting a person to the level of values, and when we are at the level of values, we are able to look down like from a hilltop and choose an alternative way. It is not necessarily to climb a hill exactly this path. From on high, you can see other paths, and when you know that, At a moment, you first of all want to enjoy yourself, to feel, for example, not in your case, but to feel somewhat calm, because you have plenty of free time and nothing to do. For example, to keep busy as a value, or maybe just to have a good time with your female friend. What shall we do? Drinking water?
As a supplementary to what you already have.
It often appears that a strategy can help you implement a large amount of values, 2, 3, or even 5. And in order to get rid of such behavior, you will need 2, 3, or 5 variants of behavior, because a person makes the best possible choice. In this case, it is the best choice with regard to implementing this value. Of course, we can suppress this part of, personality. As far as I know, people are doing sometimes to have a psychiatric impact at some trainings. We can suppress it, telling a person that it's wrong and that the person shouldn't do it, that that person shouldn't get rid of it, thus making him or her feel ashamed or guilty. And the person stops behaving a certain way, for example, smoking. And the part of that person's personality, which is implementing that value, which is responsible for that value, will begin to express itself some other way. For example, a person will start having nightmares, or a person will become nervous and short-tempered, or will start drinking alcohol because that part of personality has been treated, disrespectfully. And like a gorilla in the woods, it will begin to derail trains. Therefore, what we are doing now is working with your self-awareness by asking ourselves every time, what am I doing and what value do I want to implement right now? And another question, how can I implement this value another way? It appears that we very gradually are expanding our vision by offering alternative choices, because it is not always the best way to enjoy yourself through eating sweets. There are other ways.
I agree. Okay, what other questions could be asked to me in this case?
I recommend that you should compile a list of values which you are implementing depending on the context. For example, when you are in town, you surely eat certain food. When you are home, you eat some other food. When you have a meeting with your female friends, you eat some third food. You eat some fourth food in the evening and some other food early in the morning. And every time it is some different food. And every time before choosing, before making a decision, you are motivated by a certain value. It is critical to be aware of those values. Let us consider a specific example. What value is it?
I feel boring in life because this is one of my most significant criteria. Either I feel boring or my life is intense. If my life is not intense with intellectual people, talented, then my life goes boring again. So this is like
You've just expressed your beliefs we discussed in our previous podcast, where you correlated as a value being bored and being able to get rid of dullness only by communicating with interesting people, or, once again, what else can you do to implement this value? You say dullness. How else could you name the value? I think joyfulness sounds differently. It is not joyfulness.
no, intensity of my life.
What other way can you implement it?
Again, here I've got a virtual circle, because before I used to travel around the world with the dancing tournaments and competitions. I would do it now, but now with those kilos which I got, I cannot participate in dancing competitions. So my life again gets boring. It's a virtual certainty.
What else can you add to your life to eliminate this dullness?
Love.
What else?
It's hard to say. Hobbies. creative hobbies.
Okay, what else? We could elaborate each of those ways further on by segments. What else could you add?
Would you help me what might be? What others exist?
Well, for example, by my reckoning, through my intensity, when you are very busy and have no time to have some rest or a lunch or something, a busy schedule, when you have to, you have no time even to stop and to think something over. I would add, speaking for myself, any activity which burns a lot of calories, such as, for example, jogging, sports, availability of an environment where getting a level downward, where it is not accepted. We very often underestimate our environment. For example, you communicate with people accustomed to overeating when they feel stressed, and if you replace your environment, then gradually it's not guaranteed that it will happen immediately. With athletes or interesting people, intelligent people who are not accustomed to that, your environment will, in some sense, be setting certain rules. It will be difficult to you to continue doing that, or you will change your environment and people will start eating cakes. It happens. Where a person gets adapted to the environment, it is also a critical point.
To some point, it seems very logical, right?
Yes, we are talking about logical levels, or we can add some more values to our life, a supercritical value of health. It also may be.
Oh, that's not my value. This is the point.
It is very important, so to say, burden of our life, because I know people maintaining a healthy lifestyle because they are afraid of being not healthy very much.
I believe so.
When a person takes it rather easy, well, it is happening today and we will be able to correct it tomorrow, we have money and we will pay, a casual attitude toward his or her health without that, awful alternative, such as, if you are not healthy, it is awful, it is bad. And having communicated with such people, I noticed in many of them that there is correlation between their health and their motivation, very often. I would also add as a value food discipline and discipline in general, because very often food refers to opportunities. People having food self-discipline, eating at a certain time, measuring calories, carbs, proteins and fats, calculating everything, they are disciplined. And people who don't control themselves in eating, they don't have food discipline at all.
How about identity? Do we regard identity in this case, or do we only stop on the level of values?
In this case, it will get assembled because anyway, you somehow name yourself at this moment, in this current situation.
Very strange identity I've got, because before I have had an identity, like I am a very beautiful woman. I knew that for the whole of my life. Right now, I have strange position with identity.
Well, if we want to have rather dynamic changes, we'd better work at the levels of strategies and values. To be more specific, behavior, strategies and values. Integrating identity takes from 2 months. It's a process of crystallization, so to say, building a home.
Does it mean that it is as well long to lose your identity? It also takes long time to acquire it, and it takes long time to lose it in this case.
Well, you can lose your identity pretty easy and very quickly. In the material world, for example, a person gets fired. He or she was an engineer and stopped being an engineer very quickly. Or, for example, a person was rich and stopped being rich. However, at the same time, identity is a method allowing us to try to tighten up lower logical levels. For example, when a rich person has stopped being rich, but continues to physiologically believe that it is a temporary situation, that person will be able to faster restore his or her identity.
Oh, Oh, then I can stay optimistic in this case. Okay.
But it is, let us say, building up. It is a process which requires certain incorporation and time, because I should remind it once again, identity is a cortical focus of excitation. If something was activated occasionally and deactivated immediately, for example, you had a cabbage leaf for lunch and thought, well, I'm already a healthy person and I can commit sins now. Of course, nothing will be integrated, and as I said, a certain food discipline, when you select in accordance with certain criteria and integrate, it will be more strategically useful in this case.
Well, I believe this was one of the most useful podcasts for me out of all we have recorded before, and I believe for the listeners as well. I think maybe girls would listen more attentively, but I think for a lot of boys it's acute and relevant as well. So please, you're welcome to write down below in the commentaries and do reposts. Put up your likes, please. Write down your commentaries. We were glad to work for you to tell this useful information and hear each other in the next podcast.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye.